I was 24 years old when my life changed in a way I could never have imagined. Up until then, things were simple, predictable even. I worked morning shifts at Murphy's Diner in Millbrook, a small town in upstate New York where not much ever happened. The diner was a relic from the 80s red vinyl booths, checkered floors, a menu laminated so many times it could survive a flood. Truckers, retirees, and construction crews filled the place most mornings, and I spent hours pouring coffee, balancing plates of pancakes, and trying to smile through the exhaustion. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid my tuition at community college. My dream was to finish my degree, transfer to a 4-year university, and one day start a business of my own. I lived with my mom, Linda, in a small apartment above the dry cleaner where she worked as a seamstress. She had raised me alone, telling me that my father died in a car accident before I was born. It was a story I had believed for as long as I could remember, though a small part of me always wondered about him. When I was 7, I'd stumbled across an old photograph tucked inside one of Mom's books. It showed two teenagers in love, standing by a lake. On the back was a message: Linda, you are my whole world. I will love you forever. Garrett. The signature fascinated me, the bold swoop of the G, the flowing letters afterward. When I asked Mom about it, she grew upset and told me never to bring it up again. I didn't, but I kept the picture hidden away, tracing that signature so many times over the years that I could have written it myself. One Tuesday morning, my manager Pete told me a businessman had reserved the back booth for a private meeting. He didn't say who it was, just that I should keep the coffee coming. At exactly 10:00 a.m., a black sedan pulled up outside. From it stepped a tall man in an expensive suit, his hair touched with gray, his posture exuding wealth and authority. He moved through the diner as though he didn't belong, yet somehow commanded the space without effort. I greeted him with my waitress smile, poured his coffee, and asked if he was expecting someone. He said yes. His attorney would arrive shortly. The attorney showed up 20 minutes later, and they spent the next 2 hours in quiet conversation over contracts and acquisitions. I tried to give them space, dropping off sandwiches and refilling coffee, though something about the man nagged at me. His profile. The way he moved the pen in his hand felt strangely familiar. It wasn't until he signed a document with a flourish that my world tilted. The bold G, the flowing letters, it was the same signature I had memorized from that photograph. The coffee pot slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. Embarrassed, I scrambled to clean up the mess, but I couldn't ignore what I had just seen. Returning to the booth, I leaned closer as he signed another page. There it was again, clear as day. My chest tightened, my hands shaking. "Sir," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "That's my dad's signature." He looked up at me, confused. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" I swallowed hard. "Your signature. It's identical to my father's, but that can't be, because he died before I was born." The color drained from his face. His eyes studied my hair, my features as though searching for something. His hand trembled as he asked quietly, "What's your name?" "Kate Baker," I said. "And your mother?" Linda Baker." The gold pen slipped from his fingers and clattered to the floor. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Linda Baker. From Buffalo." "Yes," I replied cautiously. He looked as though he'd been struck. "Oh my God," he said. "You're her daughter. You're my daughter." I could barely stand. My whole life I had believed my father was gone. Yet here he was, a man I recognized from headlines. Garrett Kane, CEO of Kane Industries, one of the wealthiest men in the country. My stomach churned as he explained that he had loved my mother at 17, that they had planned to marry, but her family had forced them apart. One day she was simply gone. He said he never knew she was pregnant. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and showed him the photograph I'd kept all these years. His eyes filled with tears as he confirmed it was real. A memory from the summer before she disappeared. He reached for my hand and whispered, "Kate, I swear I didn't know you existed. If I had known, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you. I wanted to run, to scream, to collapse. Instead, I just stared at him, torn between anger for the years lost and awe that he was real. My father, alive, sitting in a diner booth just a few feet away. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with the photograph laid out before me, waiting for Mom to come home. When she walked through the door, tired from her shift, I blurted out the truth. I had met Garrett. I had met my father. Her face went pale, her hands trembling as she sat down. "That's impossible," she whispered, staring at the picture between us. "No, Mom, he's alive. He's been alive this whole time, and he never knew about me." Tears welled in her eyes as the weight of 24 years came crashing down. My mother sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, her fingers twisting the hem of her blouse. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, broken. "Oh God. Kate, what have I done?" I had never seen her look so fragile. For as long as I could remember, she had been the strong one, the woman who worked long hours to keep food on the table, who taught me to be resilient, who convinced me we didn't need anyone else. But now, in that moment, she looked like someone who had been carrying a secret so heavy it had nearly crushed her. "Why did you lie to me?" My words came out harsher than I intended. "Why did you tell me he was dead?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I was 18. Kate, I was scared. My parents told me Garrett would ruin my life. He was just a poor boy back then with no future. Or so they said, when I found out I was pregnant. I had already moved here with my aunt. I didn't know what to do. I was too ashamed, too afraid to call him. So I told you he was gone because it felt easier than explaining the truth." "But you could have told me later," I pressed. "When I was older, you could have tried to find him." Her voice cracked. "And say what?" "That I let him believe I didn't love him. That I disappeared without a word while carrying his child. I couldn't. I convinced myself it was too late, that he wouldn't want me anymore. But the truth is," she dropped her face into her hands. "The truth is, I never stopped loving him." The words caught me off guard. I had always thought of my mother as someone resigned to loneliness, someone who had put love behind her. To hear that she had never moved on, never let go of him, filled me with a mixture of sadness and hope. "He never stopped loving you either," I whispered. "Mom, he never married anyone else. He's been alone all these years, just like you." She shook her head violently. "He must hate me for keeping you from him." "He doesn't," I insisted. "He's hurt." "Yes, but he understands why you did it. He wants to see you. He asked to." "I can't face him," she murmured. "Not after all this time." "You have to," I said firmly, surprising even myself with the strength in my voice. "You owe it to him. And you owe it to me. You've carried this secret for 24 years, Mom. It's time to let it go. Time to." The next afternoon, I arranged for them to meet at Murphy's during the quiet hours between lunch and dinner. I tried to steady my nerves as I watched from behind the counter. Garrett was already there, sitting in the same booth where I'd first recognized him. His usually confident demeanor seemed stripped away, leaving him almost boyish in his anticipation. When my mother walked in wearing a simple blue dress, she looked terrified. For a moment she froze by the door. Her eyes locked on him. Then Garrett rose to his feet. His face softened, a mixture of longing and pain etched in every line. "Linda," he said softly. "Garrett," she breathed, barely audible. They stood there for a moment that seemed suspended in time. Two people who had once been inseparable, torn apart by circumstance, now facing each other after more than 2 decades. "You look exactly the same," he said, his voice trembling. "No," she replied with a sad smile. "I'm older now, tired, I've made mistakes." "We both have," he admitted. "But Linda, we have a daughter. We have a beautiful daughter. That matters more than anything." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "I'm so sorry. Garrett, I'm so sorry I kept her from you. I'm sorry I let you believe I didn't love you." He stepped closer, shaking his head. "I know why you did it. You were scared. And your parents pushed you. I understand now. But we can't change the past. We can only decide what we do with the future. I watched as their hands found each other across the table, hesitant at first, then holding on tightly, as if making up for all the years they'd lost. They talked for hours, their voices carrying the weight of stories untold my childhood, his rise in business, her quiet years of sacrifice. It was as if time folded in on itself, revealing the love that had never truly faded. By the time they stood to leave, something had shifted. The fear that had clouded their faces was gone, replaced by a fragile but undeniable hope. That night, when I got home, Mom sat beside me on the couch. She took my hand and whispered, "Thank you for pushing me. I don't know what comes next, but for the first time in years, I feel like maybe it's not too late." I squeezed her hand, realizing I had stepped into a role I never expected, bringing them back together. In the days that followed, everything felt different, as though the ground beneath my feet had shifted. Garrett began calling me regularly, not as a billionaire CEO, but as a father eager to make up for lost time. He wanted to know everything: my favorite food, the classes I enjoyed most, the books I read late at night. He listened, really listened, in a way that made me realize just how much I had craved that kind of presence my whole life. But I still struggled with anger. For years, I had accepted a story about a father who never got the chance to hold me, who was gone before I was born. Now I had to reconcile that with the truth that he had been alive all along, raising empires while I was raised in a cramped apartment by a mother who worked herself to exhaustion. Some nights I lay awake, staring at the photograph, wondering how my life might have been if Mom had told him the truth from the start. Garrett, though, never shied away from my questions. When I asked him why he hadn't looked harder for Mom, why he had allowed her disappearance to be the end of their story, he admitted he had been young, heartbroken, and powerless. "I thought she'd left because she didn't love me anymore," he told me, his voice thick with regret. "I tried to find her at first, but her family shut me out. And then I threw myself into building my company. It was the only way I knew how to survive the pain." Hearing that didn't erase the years we lost, but it did remind me of something Mom had always told me: people make choices when they're scared, and fear can change the course of an entire life. Eventually, Garrett asked to see Mom again, this time outside the diner. I could tell she was terrified, but she agreed. The three of us met in a quiet park one Saturday afternoon. Watching them walk together beneath the fading autumn leaves felt surreal, like stepping into the photograph I had carried with me all my life. They spoke cautiously at first, as though afraid one wrong word might shatter the fragile bridge being rebuilt. But as the hours passed, laughter surfaced, memories slipped out, and I saw glimpses of the young love that had never completely died. Afterward, Garrett pulled me aside. "Kate," he said, "I can never give you back the childhood I missed, but I don't want to miss another moment. I want to help you build the life you've dreamed of. Whatever university you want, whatever future you envision, it's yours. No more struggling through community college while working double shifts. You deserve more." The offer hit me like a tidal wave. I had spent years scraping together tips to pay for tuition, telling myself hard work would eventually pay off. The idea of walking into a top university without worrying about money felt almost impossible to accept. "I don't want your help just because you feel guilty," I told him. He shook his head firmly. "This isn't guilt. This is love. You're my daughter. I want to give you the opportunities I was robbed of. Let me do this not to erase the past, but to invest in your future." That night, I sat with Mom and told her everything. She listened quietly, then nodded. "Kate, you've always carried the weight of responsibility on your shoulders. Maybe it's time to let yourself be cared for. You deserve it." 6 months later, I was standing on the steps of Columbia University, enrolled in a program I had once only dared to dream about. Garrett had come with me, carrying boxes into my dorm like any proud father. He joked about how little space I had, teased me for packing too many books, and hugged me tightly before he left, promising to call every week. Mom, meanwhile, had started working with Garrett at the foundation he had built years ago, for the first time in her life. She had a job that didn't just pay bills but gave her purpose. She came home with a light in her eyes I hadn't seen since I was a child. For me, life shifted in ways I never imagined. I was no longer the girl wiping tables at Murphy's, struggling for every dollar. I was a daughter, a student, and a bridge between two people who had found their way back to each other after decades of silence. And though the future was uncertain, for the first time I felt like I wasn't walking it alone. By the time spring arrived, my life had been transformed in ways I could barely comprehend. I threw myself into classes at Columbia, determined to make the most of every opportunity. Garrett called every week without fail, asking about my professors, my projects, even the friends I was making. He never once treated me like an obligation. Instead, he seemed genuinely grateful for every detail of my life I chose to share. Mom, too, was blossoming in her own way. She had left the dry cleaner behind and now worked as director of programs at the Kane Foundation, helping young people access scholarships and training. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Her energy was different, lighter, and though she and Garrett were cautious at first, seeing each other only occasionally, it was clear to anyone who watched them that their love had never truly died. I remember one evening when Garrett invited us both to dinner at his penthouse in the city. It was an intimidating space-glass walls overlooking Manhattan, art on the walls that probably cost more than my entire education. Yet when I saw Mom standing in the living room in her modest dress, looking uncertain, Garrett approached her with the same tender awe I had seen in the diner months before. He didn't see the lines on her face or the years that had passed. He saw the girl he had once promised forever to. They began spending more time together, and soon it was impossible to deny what was happening. They were falling back into a rhythm, rediscovering each other. One night, while we were having coffee in the kitchen, Mom admitted in a whisper, "I never thought I'd get another chance with him, and yet here we are." For me, watching them was bittersweet. I was happy, of course, but I couldn't help feeling the ache of the 24 years lost. All the birthdays Garrett had missed, all the milestones he hadn't been there for, it was a wound that would never fully heal. Yet I also realized that dwelling on the past would only rob us of the present we had finally been given. That summer, Garrett made a decision that stunned both of us. He asked Mom to marry him again. Not with a flashy public proposal or diamonds the size of my fist, but quietly, in the same park where we had first reunited. He simply took her hand, looked into her eyes, and said, "Linda, we've wasted too many years. Will you marry me? Like we always planned." Mom broke down in tears, nodding as though afraid the moment would vanish if she hesitated. I stood a few feet away, pretending to look at the ducks on the pond, though I couldn't stop crying either. Their wedding was small, nothing like the lavish ceremony Garrett could have easily afforded. Instead, they chose a little church in town, the same one they had dreamed of when they were 17. Only a handful of guests were there, me, my great-aunt who had taken Mom in years ago, and a few close friends, but the intimacy made it all the more meaningful. When the pastor asked if Garrett would take Linda to be his wife, his voice shook with emotion. "I do," he said. "I always have." And when they kissed, I saw more than two people sealing vows. I saw decades of longing finally finding peace. After the ceremony, at the modest reception, Garrett pulled me aside and handed me a small box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a pendant that nearly took my breath away. It was a tiny engraved version of the photograph I had cherished all my life, the two of them by the lake. "I had it made for you," he explained softly. "That picture brought us back together. It reminded me of what I lost, but also of what I've been given now." You've been the bridge between us, Kate, even when you didn't know it. I hugged him tightly, overcome with emotion. In just a year, my life had shifted from longing for a father I thought was gone to standing between both of my parents as they found their way back to love. Later, as I watched them dance together in the glow of string lights, I realized how extraordinary it all was. Life had robbed them of their youth together, but it had given them a second chance, and it had given me something I never thought I would have: a family whole again. Years later, I found myself back at Murphy's Diner, though this time I was a customer instead of a waitress. The red vinyl booths and checkered floors hadn't changed, though Pete, my old manager, gave me a grin when he spotted me. "Well, if it isn't our fancy college girl," he said, sliding me a menu. I laughed. "More like graduate now. I just finished at Columbia." The truth was, my life had taken on a trajectory I once could never have imagined. With Garrett's support, not just financially, but emotionally, I had thrived in school. He was there for orientation, helped me move into my dorm, and called every week to check in. Mom, meanwhile, had flourished in her role at the foundation, pouring her heart into helping others in ways that gave her a new sense of purpose. Together, they had rebuilt the love they once thought was lost, and watching them grow into a couple again was a gift in itself. I leaned across the diner table and said to Pete, "Actually, there's something I want to talk to you about. I'm starting my own nonprofit. We'll provide job training and educational support for single parents. I'd like Murphy's to be one of our partner locations." Pete's eyebrows shot up. "You mean you'd use this place to help people earn their GEDs, learn skills, that sort of thing?" "Exactly," I said. "And we'll provide childcare while they attend classes. I want to give people the same opportunities I had, but without them waiting 24 years for a miracle." He slapped the table with enthusiasm. "Count me in. This diner's always been about more than food. It's about community." Hearing that filled me with a warmth I hadn't expected. I realized then that the diner wasn't just the place where I'd first met my father. It was the place where everything in my life had shifted. The ordinary corner of town that had given me an extraordinary new beginning. A few weeks later, at a small celebration for the launch of the foundation, Garrett pulled me aside. We stood on the balcony of his apartment, looking out over the city skyline. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You know, I used to think success meant building an empire, leaving behind a business legacy, but now I know better. The only legacy that matters is the one you leave in people you love." He smiled at me with tears brimming in his eyes. "Kate, I built a company, but the most important thing I ever helped create was you." I swallowed hard, unable to speak for a moment. Then I said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mom had told you about me from the beginning?" "Every day," he admitted. "But then I think about the woman you've become. Strong, independent, resilient. That's because of your mother. If life had been different, maybe you wouldn't be you. And you, exactly as you are, is the greatest gift I could ever hope for." His words stayed with me long after. They reminded me that while the past had been marked by pain and loss, it had also shaped us into who we were meant to be. In time, Mom and Garrett remarried, sealing their love not with extravagance, but with sincerity. Their quiet vows in a small church were a testament to second chances, to the enduring power of love that refuses to fade. And when they kissed, I knew that decades of regret had finally melted into something beautiful. Years later, when I visited their home for dinner, Mom laughed more freely. Garrett's eyes softened every time he looked at her, and I felt the fullness of a family that had once seemed impossible. I realized then that life isn't about perfection, it's about redemption. About the moments we think are lost forever finding their way back to us when we least expect it. Sometimes, I still catch myself tracing that familiar signature, the one that changed everything. What once was a relic of a father I thought was dead is now a symbol of love, forgiveness, and the connections that bind us no matter how much time has passed. If there's one lesson my story has taught me, it's this: love doesn't expire. It waits, it bends, it survives even decades of silence. And when the right moment finally comes, it reveals itself with a force so powerful it can heal what once felt broken beyond repair. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what you would have done if you were in my mother's place. Your support helps us share more stories of love, forgiveness, and second chances.